Hey, how's it going? I'm IlaGolden and welcome to my blog. Alright, so on today's vlog we are talking about the Odraians, which is the second in the three-part run that I am doing on the dominant breeds. If you're not sure what I mean by the dominant breeds, I do have a vlog addressing the breeds within my multiverse a little bit, so go check that one out either now or after you've watched this one. Up to you, doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. She says. So, the Odraians, unlike the Silconians who, I want to be Silconian as I mentioned in the last vlog, not so sure I'd want to be Odraian, not because my Odraian characters aren't interesting. When I do deal with Odraian characters, they do tend to be fairly interesting or fairly involved. Biggest reason I wouldn't want to be them is because I personally view them as being arrogant. The Odraians view themselves as being the original breed. This is not strictly speaking true. The original breed is actually the Chaosen, who are for the most part believed to be extinct, although that's a little bit debatable. The Odraians evolved from the Chaosen, although it's unclear whether it was a sudden mass evolution or whether it was a gradual evolution or a combination of the two, depending on which reality or realm you're in. I think that's what it comes down to. Different realms and different realities have a different progression from the point in time that they are the Chaosen to the point in time that they are the Odraians, and depending on where you are depends on whether it was a slow evolution or a sudden evolution. But either way, the Chaosen were the original breed and the Odraians were not. But that doesn't stop them from claiming to be. And it gives them a superiority complex. They do view themselves as being the superior breed, and they are the reason why the Balance Council is the way it is. It's why the breed hierarchy is the way it is. It's all down to the Odraians, opposed to any of the other breeds that might be involved in the Balance Council. Although it was a Silconian who created the Balance Council, or created the idea for the Balance Council, it's very much the Odraians who run it. And that's not not necessarily the best thing. I mean, yes, the Odraians are pacifists, and yes, in theory they want the best for the multiverse, but they want the best for the multiverse as long as they look good, as long as they kind of come out on top a little bit. I think that's kind of my reasoning for, yes, I find Odraians incredibly interesting when I'm dealing with Odraians, and yes, I think there are a lot to them and to their breed. Certainly a lot of the ideas of how the multiverse is structured wouldn't exist without the Odraians being a factor, but that's both a pro and a con, because, as I said, they are arrogant, they have a superiority complex, and although they are, generally nice people, they are generally, caring people, that doesn't stop them from sort of mentally or socially finding ways of putting themselves on top without, not always malice, but it's not something they do with malice. It's not something they do because they're trying to be cruel or they're trying to belittle others. I think it's just something they've come to sort of believe is true of themselves, and it's that sort of arrogance which allows them to make rules and put in ridiculous social structures and ridiculous social orders, just because they think that is what they are entitled to do, and that, as I said, they're not necessarily doing it out of malice. They're not necessarily cruel people, and in fact, when you're dealing with individual Odraians, they are usually quite nice people and quite reasonable people. It's just they're nice, reasonable people who consider themselves superior to other breeds because they believe they were the first. And even when you do sort of present them with the idea that the Chaosen came first, they basically refuse to believe the Chaosen existed. So that I think speaks a little bit about them. So how are the Odraians defined as a breed? So as I said, with the Sulconians, their breed is defined by being full elementalists and having their Scintaway. The Odraians are defined by being single elementalists, and in the same way that the Sulconians could be broken down into their animal groups, the Odraians could be broken down into their elemental groups. So you were born Odraian and you could have any one of the 8 elemental abilities, and you're not necessarily inheriting the same one as your parents. Quite often you are, but you're not necessarily inheriting one or from one of your parents. But you can be broken down into, a subset. But again, the Odraians don't tend to do that because in the same way that Sulconians kind of like to be inclusive, the Odraians have a little bit of that. A little bit of not excluding somebody because they don't have the right elemental power, although at the same time they are a little bit more sectioning about things, and that is to do with their strong connection to the 10th Order, which I will eventually do a vlog on. It's coming up. But because their culture is very heavily defined by their worshipping of the 8 gods, and their connection to the 10th Order as a religion, they use their elemental abilities as one of their ways of showing their reverence and their respect, and one of their ways of worshipping their gods. So they kind of have that sort of sectioning, but it's not we won't socialise with you because you're not the same elemental ability as us. It's not quite as divided as that. But there is this idea that, you patron whatever god is the god that is the ruler of your particular elemental. So although it's still not the same sort of breakdown that you get with like the enchanted breeds, it is a little bit more broken down than you get with the Sulconian breed, where they are very inclusive. The Odraians are a little bit more sectioned. Make of that as you will. Odraians are also a very prevalent breed. There are a couple of variations within them. One of the bigger variations is whether or not they have elemental outfits, and this is an automatic change that happens to them when they start using their particular elemental, that their clothing transforms into something that resembles or strengthens or enhances whatever elemental they have the affinity for. Most Odraian breeds, or most of the Odraian versions, do have this ability, but there is a small amount that don't have the ability. And there are also a small amount of Odraians who have relocated from their original planet, and in that relocation have developed other physical traits or other physical differences from the standard Odraians, which again sets them apart, and for the most part that included losing the elemental outfit. So along with their elemental outfits, the Odraians' second most defined trait is actually their relation to the 10th Order and their worship of the gods of the 10th Order. It is something that very heavily influences them from a social point of view. So whereas the traits that define the Sulconians are both magical and physical based, the traits that define the Odraians are one magical trait and one social trait, and it's a very strong social trait that kind of defines who they are and how they sort of approach things. And you tend to find that although I do have the occasional Odraian for one reason or another that doesn't have that that sort of heavy connection to their religion, they still do identify as being Odraian, and by saying that they are Odraian, they are still associating themselves with the 10th Order, because obviously Odraian has come from the 10th Order as a name. in case that wasn't obvious, in the way that Odraian kind of has some... I suppose if you know Etin, Odraian is connected to the Etin word for order, which is Odrai. So in my head, Odraian and order, or Odrai and order, are kind of almost the same word. So when I say Odraian, I automatically think order. So when I'm saying the Odraians are very heavily connected to, to their 10th Order roots, and when they say that they're Odraian, of course, it shows that they're still linked to that. It shows they still have some pride in that, even if they're not. It makes sense to me because I know the root of the word Odraian, but I guess it makes less sense to you for not knowing the root word of Odraian. So me going, yeah, it's very obvious. Probably not so obvious to you, but at the same time, the Odraians who aren't as heavily connected to their religious roots probably don't know what else to identify as other than Odraian, because they may still have the elemental outfit, or they may still have the other physiological difference that has come from them being an Odraian that has been removed from the original world, which they would have originally come from, and growing up in a different environment, and the evolution that has happened because of that. As you can see, evolution plays a huge factor in the creation and defining of the different breeds. I guess it's because I believe in evolution. And, take that as you will. I don't think I need to say anything more on that. But, yeah. The fun thing with the Odraians, when I'm not using them as key characters, is having other characters talk about them, and having other characters talk about their opinions of them, even to the point of Odraians which have had the slightly different evolution chain, talking about what they refer to as the true Odraians, or what they're told to sort of view as being the true Odraians. You can definitely feel there is a definite resistance that has grown towards the Odraians because of their superiority complex. And as I said, it's not necessarily because the Odraians are bad people. I don't view them as being bad people. I think I'm of the belief that anybody in any single one of the breeds can be a good person or can be a bad person. Their breed doesn't define that aspect of them. They define that aspect of them. But as sort of a breed group, and as sort of a, how they are generally thought of, which, it's not a nice way of sort of thinking about things, but yeah, they are very much seen by the other breeds as having a superiority complex and being arrogant. And I think that sort of does come to them rooting themselves very, very strongly to this idea that they were the original breed, therefore they are the most important, excluding the gods and high beings, of course. And having that sort of there, and that sort of concept there, even the Silconians, who consider themselves a daughter breed of the Odraians, have very different ideas about how things should be structured and how things should be, and are much more open-minded and much more relaxed, but they are also referred to as a breed of children, or a generation of children who evolved, because that's basically what occurred with the evolution from the Odraian to the Silconians, the sudden evolution. It was children and teenagers up to about the age of 18 that suddenly evolved into the Silconian breed. So the Odraians very much see them as being, even like now, very much see them as being a child breed, a children breed, something that they need to sort of not necessarily take it seriously, or whatever, and that does give them a little bit of resistance on the part of the Silconians, and that is why the Silconians aren't kind of like, yeah, we totally support your idea that you are the most superior breed because you're the original breed. In fact, Silconians probably take the most joy out of pointing out the fact that the Odraians are not the original breed, that the Chaosin did pre-exist, or preempt, or whatever the word is. So, yeah. I hope I've given you a good gist of the Odraians and a good sense of who they are and what I think about them. I know this is a little bit shorter than the Silconian one. But again, I think I do quite a good job of characterising Odraians when I'm writing about them, and although they are a lot easier to explain without giving loads of spoilers than the Silconians are, I do think I do a better job writing. I do a better job writing this sort of side of things than I do necessarily talking about it. But yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there. This was fun. So to complete the dominant breed trilogy, the next one will be on the standing. It may or may not have more to say on them than I do with the Odraians. Probably a little bit more excited to talk about them because there is a lot more I can say, but at the same time there's a lot less that I can say. So we'll see how that goes. That should be interesting. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this has given you something. Whatever that something is. And I will see you next time. See ya.